Okay, so what a week we've had in the Ukraine conflict. And as people are starting to try and suggest that the Ukrainian counteroffensive has slowed down or is not achieving much, I'll come on to that in a minute, because actually it is doing exactly what it should be doing. But all focus wasn't on Ukraine over the weekend, it was on Russia. And it was on the Wagner leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin's move to take over Rostov-on-Don, one of Russia's largest cities, and the site of the headquarters of Russia's Southern Command, the command headquarters that is responsible for the majority of operations into Ukraine. And then not only was he focused on capturing Rostov-on-Don, which he did within a few hours, not firing a shot and not taking any casualties, he pushed a convoy of his troops, a well-disciplined convoy of his troops, up towards Moscow, about 1,000 kilometers, and he got to within 200 kilometers of Moscow before he stopped, and then very quickly disbanded his operation, saying that he was going to turn around and everyone was going to go home. So what's happened? What's been going on? And why did he turn around? That is the $6 million question. And a lot of it goes back to a relationship that Prigozhin had last year with the then commander of Russian operations into Ukraine, and that was General Surovikin. Now, General Surovikin is an Air Force general. He was put in charge of operations into Ukraine after the successes of what he carried out in Syria, where he earned the nickname General Armageddon. He was the architect behind supporting Bashar al-Assad's chemical weapons attacks on his own people and many of the atrocities that we've heard about out of Syria. He is a very capable military leader, and whenever he took over inside Ukraine, he realized that the Russian position, especially on the west bank of the Dnipro River around the city of Kherson, was untenable, and it was him that made the decision to withdraw Russian troops back over the Dnipro and use the Dnipro as a natural barrier. Warfare is all about human interactions and human decisions, and underpinning everything that there is within the political side and the military side of what's going on in Russia is a criminal network, and that criminal network is based on business and who can generate more money than the others. We have to remember that Prigozhin started off as a convicted criminal, went on to sell hot dogs, and then became chef into the Kremlin, and Putin's chef, won a major contract to supply all of the food to the Russian military, and has developed that into the Wagner private military group that has got its presence all over the globe, not just in Ukraine, but Africa is the core of that. And Africa is the core of it because of the business deals and business opportunities that are there. So Surovikin, deputy commander now in Ukraine, and he was made deputy commander whenever the Russian defense minister, Shoigu, decided that he was going to, in inverted commas, sack him and put General Gerasimov in as his boss. Now, General Gerasimov was the commander of Russian forces, but he was then given responsibility to command all of the activities inside Ukraine, because I think Shoigu was upset that Surovikin had made the decision to withdraw Russian troops, and the optics that that gave withdraw Russian troops back across the Dnipro. And I don't think he liked the relationship that there was, and this is last year, building up between him and Prigozhin from the Wagner Group. Interestingly, as soon as that sacking, that move happened, where Surovikin then became a deputy to Gerasimov, that's when Prigozhin started to become quite vocal. And he became very vocal and very anti-Shoigu, the defense minister, and anti-Gerasimov, the Russian commander inside Ukraine, and was openly criticizing them and criticizing Russia's policies into Ukraine for quite a period of time. He'd take to social media. He had a massive social media following. And actually, whenever you look at a lot of the activity that happened over the last year inside Ukraine, the majority of the noise that was coming out, the statements that were coming out from people on the ground seemed to be focused on Bakhmut, this tiny little town, about 7 kilometers by 7 kilometers, if you take the whole of the townland around, on a 1,200 kilometer front line, but you'd think that everything was focused on there. And that's because Yevgeny Prigozhin and the Wagner Group wanted to try and take the limelight for everything that was going on. You take the limelight, you keep the influence, you keep the business deals, you keep the money rolling in. And he wanted the money rolling in to support his activities in Ukraine, because the person that was allowing him to continue to do this was the person that had built him up in the first place, and that's Vladimir Putin. Why was he doing this? Why was Putin working so closely with him? Why had he built him up? It's because Putin needed this private military company that is, strictly speaking, illegal under the Russian constitution, but he needed it to go out and make sure that the wealth and elements of wealth that couldn't be sanctioned easily by the international community, diamonds, gold, wood, were things that could continue to be seeded away in different places so that it could protect not just Putin, but the whole of his oligarch inner circle, and therefore protect his position and power. And he had allowed over the years, and not many years, the Wagner Group only started in 2014, over the years for Wagner to get into that position where it was effectively controlling the international wealth development and wealth creation bit for many of the oligarchs. And that's how he got his position. But his position was quite clearly very strong indeed, because he's the only person that has managed to be able to openly criticize the defense minister, and therefore by implication criticize Vladimir Putin's policies, and then not end up taking up a window cleaning job or falling down the stairs or falling off the back of a boat as it's going along very fast, because anyone else that criticizes what's going on seems to have done that. So what happened at the weekend? Prigozhin took over Rostov-on-Don, took over the Southern Group headquarters. He wanted to get Defense Minister Shoigu and wanted to try and capture General Gerasimov, and thought they were going to be inside that headquarters. And when they weren't there, he launched his well-planned military convoy towards Moscow. Why do I say well-planned? It was well-planned because he had got transport vehicles for his tanks, trucks to transport them. He got air defense put amongst the convoy. So whenever the Russian Air Force tried to attack his convoy that was going in, a number of helicopters and a very valuable command and control fixed-wing aircraft were shot down. And that is something that you have to have a well-planned air defense plan in a convoy to be able to do that. So he's moving towards Moscow. He's not quite sure what he's doing because he hadn't been expecting not to get Shoigu and Gerasimov, and didn't really want to try and take over the Kremlin and fight in through Moscow, and got to within about 200 kilometers of it before a peace deal was done from the president of Belarus, Lukashenko. And Lukashenko is taking the credit for what was something that was probably negotiated between a number of others involved in this wider criminal network, and getting Prigozhin to stand down. Part of the deal for him standing down was Prigozhin is to go into exile in Belarus. Interestingly, Belarus doesn't allow private military companies. And the Wagner soldiers were to either go and join him in Belarus, melt back into their communities, or to sign contracts to join the Russian military. That is something that the Russian command had asked a number of weeks beforehand, or had told Wagner a number of weeks beforehand that they were going to require their troops to join the Russian military. And again, Prigozhin had said that this would never happen. So it all came to a head over the weekend. It blew up enormously, and then it seems to have calmed down with Prigozhin having gone to Belarus. However, in the background, Vladimir Putin is sitting there embarrassed. His position has been made slightly more untenable. There's a risk to his authority that's been put in there. So what have we seen from that? We've seen him going out and talking to and visiting different parts of Russia, walking amongst the crowds, drawing silly pictures on whiteboards, and trying to pretend that everything is genuine. Well, it probably wasn't the genuine Vladimir Putin that was going out and meeting the crowds. It is known that he has at least one, if not more, stand-ins who will go out and do a lot of these public activities whilst he remains hiding in the Kremlin or elsewhere, so that he can remain protected and away from things. But he's also starting to use this as a bit of a position to have a night of the long knives. And since the weekend, we haven't heard of where General Surovikin, this deputy to General Gerasimov, this friend of Prigozhin, we haven't heard where he's gone. And there are rumors abound that he has been arrested by Russian security services, the FSB, and is being interrogated for his relationship with Prigozhin and the Wagner Group. There are rumors abound, and it has just come out this week from the head of Ukrainian intelligence, Budanov, who has said that Surovikin was an honorary member of Wagner. Now, we have to take all of this with a big pinch of salt. We've got people playing on people here, and it suits the Ukrainians and it suits the West to try and have Surovikin put in a position where any trust in him is destroyed. Why? Because he probably is one of the more competent generals that there is in the Russian command structure, and he knows what he's talking about. He's certainly much more competent as a commander than his current boss, Gerasimov, and he probably has ambitions to go elsewhere. Competent doesn't mean that he's a nice person. None of the individuals in this game are nice people. And Surovikin personally has been responsible for some horrible atrocities in the Middle East and inside Ukraine. None of the players are nice people at all. Along with Surovikin, a number of others seem to have disappeared. And I think what is probably going to happen is Vladimir Putin is going to take the issue around the attempted coup to try and have a bit of a clear out of those that he doesn't feel support his activities completely, and see if he can then restart his political position in what's happening inside Ukraine, as well as trying to improve the military command structure and his military position. The Ukrainians have got a different view on this. They're taking the opportunity to continue with their counteroffensive, and their counteroffensive is continuing to probe in 3 areas. The first is around Bakhmut, and they've had some success in the last couple of days to the south of Bakhmut, advancing over 1,500 meters in certain areas, and are getting closer to a position where they could potentially encircle the town and cut off the Russian troops that are in there. Remember, this has taken the Ukrainians only a few days to do this. It took the Russians 18 months to advance 7 kilometers across Bakhmut. The Ukrainians are doing well. They're probing there. They're probing just to the south of Donetsk and pushing in through there. And they're probing on a line down from Zaporizhia down towards Tokmak, where they would be trying then to push down to the coast and cut off that land bridge that's all important from Crimea up into Russia. It's early days still in the Ukrainian counteroffensive. They're still probing, they're still looking for ways through the Russian minefields and defenses. They're still looking for potential weaknesses. They're attacking in different places at different strengths. Why are they doing that? They're doing it to see if they can breach these defenses, and in breaching the defenses, see if they can get the Russians to deploy their reserve troops to try and plug the holes that are in there. The more reserves that they can get to deploy before the Ukrainians push in with their major counterattack with a big armored formation punch, the better, because the Russians will have less and less ability to respond. Things are looking okay for Ukraine at the minute. Things are looking worrying for Vladimir Putin in Russia at the moment, and activity is going to happen to try and shore up Putin's position. And we haven't seen the end of what's going on yet. We don't know who else or what else has been supporting Prigozhin's potential coup, and that will come out in the coming days. And the impact of all of that on the tactical operations of the ground, again, properly hasn't played out, but we'll see that coming in the next few days.